If you enjoy listening to The Edge, support them by subscribing to The Edge on iTunes, Stitcher, and you can listen through the iHeartRadio app. Get busy listening.
This is The Edge.
The advantage it means.
Hey, look, I just spit on me for no reason.
That's horrible.
Is there some comfort in uncertainty, do you think?
You're a degenerate.
Because Australian Shepherds need action.
Wow. Yeah.
This is The Edge.
That's a self-loathing term that I use for it.
Oh, got it.
This is The Edge. Edge-show.com.
Hi and welcome. I'm Mark Thompson, and this is an episode that's got a lot of different things going on in it. And even as I say that, I'm looking at something right now. The LAPD has a program out here in Los Angeles. It's a cadet program. So they get involved with teenagers who might have an eye on getting into law enforcement at some point. So these are 16, 17-year-old kids, 18-year-olds. Anyway, apparently 2 of the cadets stole police cruisers, tasers, and bulletproof vests and took the cops on a huge chase. The department became aware around 5 o'clock in the evening that 2 LAPD cruisers had gone missing, sparking an investigation. Good thinking. And they focused almost immediately on a 16-year-old, you think a couple of guys, this is the problem with those boys. No, female cadet. They found video of the teen fueling the car at a city gas pump. The 2 stolen cruisers were spotted, and then a chase began. The drivers ignored officers' commands to pull over. Well, this just in, if they stole 2 cruisers, I'm guessing they're not really going to be responsive to the pull over command. Both police cruisers crashed, and then the LAPD officers who were chasing one of the cars, they were involved in a crash. One of the cadets was wearing a spare bulletproof vest used for training purposes when the crash happened. 2 tasers, 2 police radios, a bulletproof vest, all stolen and recovered. Odd story. We've got a few odd stories in today's show. Michael Shure joins us for the Fast 15 and more, and it's a lot of more today with Michael. We talk about going inside a bookie operation. I tell a story about actually having to meet a bookie outside the studios of Fox, and then just an odd moment that unfolds. Then literally one of the world's leading primatologists comes by. We'd planned to get together anyway, and then front page news is the vanishing habitat of Madagascar, which is this magical place that supports all of this wildlife, but wildlife that is unique to Madagascar. It doesn't live anywhere else in the world. Anyway, so I said, well, you come in and just talk to us for like 10 minutes about Madagascar. So we'll hear something from primatologist Mireya Mayor and her husband, Phil Fairclough, who is a television producer for Nat Geo, who's been behind some of the highest profile wildlife and nature films and television programs in history. And we'll also meet another podcaster today who has a brand new podcast, and we'll find out a little something about that. So some people stopping through the neighborhood today, and glad you could be part of it. Thank you for being here. Thanks for all your support. Thanks for sharing this show. That's the way we can grow the audience. We're just a homegrown kind of podcast, and now with 6 jillion podcasts out there, it's more important than ever for you to show your support. So thank you very much for sharing the show. Thank you for leaving something on our website to the PayPal link. Thank you for shopping through Amazon on our website. And our website, again, is edge-show.com. If you subscribe to the show on iTunes or on Stitcher, you'll always get a new episode delivered to you. So you never have to worry about when there's a new episode. We try to drop them weekly, but you'll always receive a new episode if you subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher or any other subscription services like Overcast. You can subscribe through the podcast app on your iPhone or Android. All right, enough chatter. Thanks for being here. On with the show. Time for the Fast 15, politics, and more with Michael Shure, ladies and gentlemen. Whoa, that's overwhelming.
Wow.
Wow. That's just ridiculous. Come on.
Man, you
Come
people.
On. Let's
you
have a little
must not have lives.
How about a little decorum?
Yeah.
My gosh. Well, we have a lot to talk about, and I want to get into some of the heavier stuff, but I just thought I'd start with some small items. I didn't realize the fact that Dennis Rodman, who's over in North Korea right now,
right.
the NBA star, he has a great relationship, apparently, with, or some kind of relationship with the ruler of North Korea, who is kind of a crazy, right? Take kind of out.
He's crazy. It's weird. They have a leader who is unfit for the job and is kind of a little off balance.
I'm picking up what you're laying down.
Right. He's Kim Jong-un.
Well, Dennis Rodman's trip to see Kim over in North Korea is sponsored by potcoin.com. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Yeah. Potcoin.com, as I'm sure our audience would be all too happy to explain to you, offers banking services to the legal marijuana industry. One of his earlier visits to North Korea was sponsored by an Irish gambling company. So when he goes over there, he obtains a sponsorship before he actually hits the road.
This Dennis Rodman trip is brought to you by.
In this case, potcoin.com.
Right.
I'm thinking he loves going over there also because of the Korean women who in North Korea, under this dictatorship, are forced to probably have parties with Dennis Rodman.
Is that right? I don't know
I
that
absolutely
about
think
North
so.
Korea.
I think there's a whole sex component here that is
usually
just
with
happening.
Dennis Rodman, that would figure. But I don't know. I mean, I know that he's a guy who likes attention, and he gets it every time he goes there, or both times that he's gone there. So that may be enough for some people and may not be. But money's well spent by Potcoin, and you're always wondering if they're doing the right things with those dollars, and it turns out that they're getting a lot of bang.
Yeah, so that's your quick word on that. I also had one other little thing, Michael, before we get to maybe some of the heavier stuff that you have loaded.
This is the more. There's no rule about the Fast 15. It's politics and more, but it could be more and then politics.
Right, you can lead with the more, is what
Yeah,
you're saying.
yeah,
Sure.
exactly.
So I saw an odd thing. I wanted to tell everybody about it.
I'm eager to hear about it.
Hold on a second, I had it here. Oh, here it is. You know the case of Robert Durst? He's the New York real estate guy, billionaire guy. He clearly murdered a bunch of people, right?
Right.
And
was sentenced in Los Angeles for...
He was sentenced in Los Angeles for the gun charge.
Right.
But which is, again, like even a weirder thing. This guy is leaving dead bodies behind like most people like leave receipts from CVS. You know what I mean? They're just everywhere.
Well, a receipt from CVS, I got to say, is not
noticeable.
a good thing to leave behind because nothing is bigger in the world than a CVS receipt. So
it's more noticeable than a dead body.
Yeah, it is.
It's a bigger mass than a dead body.
Leave an automatically generated taxi cab receipt, then you're fine. But a CVS receipt, you're
By the way, just because we're talking about CVS receipts, it's, again, because I'm kind of maybe on some things anyway, environmentally noticing, how can you justify that? Isn't there a way that, you have everybody's phone number because you put in your phone number at CVS with every transaction?
Right.
So why not text that stuff to everyone?
Exactly. And if you're going to charge for a bag, as they do in California at CVS, the bag, it seems, takes up less of the environment than those damn receipts do.
Thank you. Never even thought of that. How can you, on the one hand, be so sensitive to this bag issue,
right,
and yet completely insensitive to the fact that you're just clear-cutting to make for these goddamn CVS receipts?
Right. Wow.
Anyway, back to Robert Durst. So he's left this trail of bodies. He first rubbed out somebody allegedly in 1982 was the disappearance of his first wife, Kathleen.
Okay.
And if you watch this HBO documentary about him called
The Jinx.
The Jinx was the name of the documentary, yeah. The story about where he was and where she was, it just doesn't wash.
Right.
He has the clunkiest alibis, and so it's really everything but literally blood on his hands in these cases.
Yeah.
And yet...
And he was so sloppy.
Right. Because he's so rich, he's been able to really escape any kind of true justice because, the way we work the courts in this country, if you got a lot of money, and by the way, this is not the only country where that's the case.
Right.
You're able to skate. So he's been skating for a long time. He's 74 years old now. He's now accused of the execution-style shooting of his best friend, Susan Berman. That was in 2000. He shot her and killed her because she knew about his killing of his wife, Kathleen. By the way, those aren't the only two killings we're talking about. He killed a neighbor down in New Orleans and hacked up the body, and it's crazy, this stuff that this guy's done. So, Mark, we get it. What's going on with the case? Well, there's one weird thing that's happened. I mean, aside from the other weird things that all have to do with murdering people.
Right.
The detective in the case, who's called upon to testify, he's having to make the trip from New Jersey to California to testify. And to do that, he has expenses. Like he has to get somebody to watch his house. And in this case, he has older animals. They're dogs that need, and they're sick. They actually need not only to be watched, but they need like medications that need to be administered.
Costly too.
Exactly.
Which is why Potcoin comes in and sends the guy to California.
This witness in the Durst trial is brought to you by potcoin.com. So he is looking for either boarding reimbursement for his 2 elderly dogs. Again, one needs daily insulin shots. That's $191 a day. Or he's saying, hey, listen, I got a cheaper way to go. We'll hire my sister. She'll do it for $100 a day. She'll come over, watch the dogs, maybe even come stay at the house and administer the insulin. So that's the latest back and forth. Like, who's going to pay for that? Is that too much?
Right.
There are other witnesses who have protection, like they've set up a system of protection, but then their spouses are not protected. So when they come to testify, the spouse is unprotected. So they have to set up protection for them too. So this Durst trial is expensive in a lot of different ways.
Yeah. When you have these big trials, that's kind of what happens.
So the latest is the pet sitting fees and attendant issues with the Robert Durst trial.
Yeah. I have a more item.
Oh, good.
I was in Mexico City last week. And I woke up one morning, and Angela Merkel was in the lobby leaving. I took pictures of her. She was there coming out into her car and left.
She was doing the walk of shame?
Yeah, she's doing the walk of shame. You wouldn't have known it. Here's what happened. And this is going to be brief. But Thursday, I land in Mexico City, get into my taxi, go to the hotel, walk in, check in, go to my room. It's Thursday night. Hang out with my brother and my mom. That was what I was there with the family. And then on Friday, we leave the hotel. We come back to the hotel on Friday, and there are all these magnetometers, these things that you walk through so they see that you don't, they're like X-ray machines or metal detectors. And there's a sort of a jury-rigged, conveyor that you put your bag on that goes through the X-ray machine. You go up to your room, and it's fine. But on Saturday, all day Friday and Saturday morning, these things were there, right? And then you find out it's because Angela Merkel and the German delegation were staying there while visiting with the president of Mexico. Well, here's the thing. I was 4.5 feet from Angela Merkel. On Thursday, on the way from the airport to the hotel, I could have stopped, picked up a gun, gone to my room with it because there was no magnetometer, nothing. Come down Saturday morning, milled about the lobby, and arguably the most powerful person in the free world was in the lobby, and there was nothing to have stopped me from doing something.
That's so bizarre.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
I didn't think of it then. I thought of it in retrospect. But I was just surprised. I mean, I feel a little weird even telling the story because, does somebody hear about it? But I don't think the Edge audience is like that. They'll
write like maybe an angry email to somebody, but they're not going to go kill somebody.
But it's usually about me, and come on. I think
those are I only share the ones about you with you.
I see. There are others too. Okay. But yeah, so anyway, it was just an interesting thing. Like the President of the United States would never fly that way or travel that way. You would have dogs going room to room. They do it. The Secret Service sweeps the entire place. Maybe it was, maybe Mexico's just not on it as much, but it was interesting.
That's really interesting. Yeah. One of the things I like about Michael Shure, maybe the only thing I like about Michael Shure, I'm reassessing friends all the time.
You put it in the plural, and I was taken aback by that. I thought there was just one thing that you liked.
He is an inveterate gambler, as am I. A little, and by the way, he bets, but he doesn't bet like life-changing money, and neither do I.
Well, he did until his life changed, and then he started betting less money. So I don't think that there's.
But we've been doing it for a long time,
right?
And so here's the point: now there's the internet. You do it. You can bet on your phone. You can bet. I mean, it's not right to because I only bet when I'm in Las Vegas because it's illegal to do it any other way, I guess.
Well, right. If you're living in a state that isn't Nevada, you're breaking the law. So you'll only do it in Nevada, which is what I live my life by.
Back in the old days, when I was okay with breaking the law by calling a bookie, you would call this place. There's no internet.
Right.
And
you'd get a number from a guy who had a number and a guy, and he would recommend you. And he'd say, "Yeah, this is my friend Mark," and give him a line up to $3,000 and
right.
Whatever.
And I'll never tell you. I'm going to tell everybody what my number was for many years. It was 459. I don't know how they came up with that.
I was 291.
Okay.
If that's correct, your number 291. Thanks.
Right.
Good luck, guy.
When you give them the bets, they read them back to you, and then they say, "If that's correct, give me your number." And that's when you say your number again. By the way, on Christmas, I called in because there are a lot of games on Christmas.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, hi, it's 459 calling. And they said, Merry Christmas, 459. And I said, because it's the weirdness of him calling me 459, I said, hey, Mrs. 459 just walked in, and she wanted to say Happy Merry Christmas to you, too. And all the little 459s, they've all come into the room, and we just want to say big Merry Christmas to you.
Merry Christmas, 459 just about says it all.
Merry Christmas from the 459 family.
That would be the title of the sitcom you write about the bookie place, would be Merry Christmas, 459.
So, you went down and actually saw a book.
Yeah,
operation.
I kind of, you get to know the guy when you pay and when you, on the rare time that you collect, and you don't ever meet them at an office or where they conduct their stuff. I mean, you meet them at 7-Eleven or you meet them at the cleaners or whatever. And it's always friendly and nice, but because I'm kind of aggressive about meeting people, I mean, not in a bad way. I'm certainly fascinated by people who live lives that I don't, come into contact with. So I sort of befriended the guy, and then I told him that I was writing a play or a screenplay, which wasn't entirely fiction, that I was doing that because I thought
just wasn't
about
about gambling.
Right. It was, but I thought about it because I thought these characters are great, and it's this underworld subculture, et cetera, and I thought it was fun. But so he invited me to come one Sunday to sort of sit there for a couple of hours while it was all going on. So I went, and it's in a back house in Venice, California. And a back house is, you have a guest house or a garage that's converted. And it was in a not very good neighborhood, like a pretty dangerous neighborhood, dogs barking everywhere. You walk back. I mean, it wasn't blighted or anything, and it wasn't like that, but it was just, different. And so I walked in back, and I go in, and I see the guys. There are about 6 guys sitting in there, and then there's the one big guy who's my guy who kind of runs the whole outfit. And it's Sunday morning, and the games start here at 10 a.m., and I probably got there at about 8. And from 8 o'clock on, the phone did not stop ringing until kickoff. And so much so that they would pick up, these were all landlines pick up the phone. They'd put the phone back down on the handset, and they would just wait for it to ring without letting go, because it would ring a second later. They'd pick up and take another order. Then they're reporting the orders to the end of the table where the big guy is. And if there's too much one way, he calls his bookie and bets it the other way so that they have a balance there. They're making just what they want. And then there's some players who are on hot streaks and some players who are on cold streaks. So, for example, and I remember this because it was 173 was the number. When 173 calls in, let me know what he plays because he's on a big hot streak. So they all bet with their own bookies. Everybody in there calls a different bookie to bet what 173 bet.
Wow, that's great. That's really great.
Right. It was fascinating. And, of course, I only had one bookie, and he was at the end of the table. So
you couldn't bet what 173
No,
bet.
I was like, yeah, I'll just take what 173 has. But it was really fascinating.
You mentioned paying off the bookie. You'd meet him at a 7-Eleven or whatever. I used to meet, again, this is old school. Now you can do the whole thing online if you do it. Of course, you really shouldn't. But I used to do it by phone, as I mentioned. And I used to meet the guy at the Chevron station here in L.A., right across from the studios at Fox.
Right.
And I wish I could tell you that he's dropping off money to me every week, but that really wasn't the way it worked. I'm giving him an envelope with money. Like, I don't want the guy coming to the house.
No, you don't. And you don't want to go to wherever his place. He doesn't want you going there. But,
and I also don't want to have to go anywhere.
Right.
Like I lost. Isn't that enough? You come to me.
Yeah.
So, but I can't have him pull up into the driveway at Fox. But I kind of want it as close to, I'm working at Fox at this point, as you can figure out, as close to where I am as possible. So there's a Chevron station across from Fox. I said, okay, so I'll meet you at the Chevron station. So every week I meet this guy, and then after a while, he didn't want to go there anymore, I guess. He's supposedly, a big deal. So he sends this other guy, this little guy, kind of a Semitic-looking guy. I want to say maybe he was Iranian or something. He seemed like a very nice guy. He was in a beater car, and he shows up. And I kind of felt bad for the guy. Like, I think he walked with a limp, too. I mean, the whole thing was just, I'm sure he hadn't set out for this gig and, when he was with the career counselor. So I meet him week after week, and I'm giving him money. And then it occurs to me, I call my guy. His name was Ricky.
Right.
I said, hey, Ricky, this guy I'm meeting, it's kind of humiliating to me, that I'm giving him money. He doesn't know who I am or what I do, because I do come out there in a necktie all the time. He said, no. He says doesn't even have a TV. He doesn't know who you are. He literally doesn't have a television. I said, okay. All of a sudden it just hit me as weird. Like, I don't know, maybe you just got some kind of, he said, no. Relax. No, nobody. No. Okay, great. Next week goes by and I got to pay him money again. I go over to the Chevron station and this guy pulls up in his beater car. He gets out, and he's got a little girl with him.
Like a daughter, little girl?
Yeah,
or
like a little, like a little daughter, little girl. Like she might
Right.
be 6 or 7. I mean, she's like 7. And I said, hey, how you doing? And I'm reaching out to give him the envelope, and he says, Mark, could you take a picture with my daughter?
Oh, my God. That's unbelievable.
I'm thinking, this is insane. I literally just had this conversation with Ricky.
That's crazy. And I love that the Semitic guy has a Costa Rican accent.
It's the only accent I do.
That's really amazing. So what did you tell Ricky after?
So first of all, I said, well, can I get a picture of me giving your daughter the envelope?
Right. And then your daughter saying to me, I can't believe you took the Chiefs -4. But there is a picture somewhere of me with a 7-year-old girl at the Chevron station. I've just paid off the book. On the day you just spent $1,342.
I never said anything to Ricky. It was like, whatever.
My gambling, my bookmaking, my interaction with bookmakers started in Greenwich Village at a too young age, at a place that the sign on the door said cooking club. My God, I don't remember what it was called. But a private cooking club. It said private cooking club. And you go inside, and these are mafia people, literally mafia, members of the Lucchese family, low levels of them. They couldn't have been nicer, but it was fun sitting around hearing them talk about everything. And you couldn't call them. You would just write a slip, leave it there, and come back.
I hate to say it because I know the mafia not known for being great, but because they've been romanticized in so many films and books, it just seems like a cooler room to be in.
It was a cooler room only because of that. It was old miserable fucks talking about life and taking book from people who just walked in. A lot of horse players, a lot of numbers players, and the number in New York. You hear people who are numbers runners. The number was this number that people come in and they say, "Give me $100 on 3." And 3 was the number. It was like a private lottery.
How do the numbers work? It's just
the numbers are a combination of and an averaging out of the winning horses in 2 different races that day. Usually,
so it's a knowable thing. It can't be manipulated.
It can't be manipulated. You can always find out what the numbers. I mean, I had no idea. If I put $1 on the 3 and it paid 6 to 1, oh great, I got $6 and I have no idea why it was the 3 today, But I never knew the formula, and had I known it, I probably wouldn't have been able to figure it out. But I don't do that stuff anymore. I did it for a period, and it was romantic, and it was interesting, and I just liked being on the other side for a moment too.
Yeah, I think it really is cool to, like so many things, be in and out of. You don't want to make that your life.
Oh, no. I mean, I never worked there. I never got paid. I never was a bookmaker or anything like that. I did love being in that environment for a very finite period of time.
Well, it's not so different than what people say about professional poker. Oh, it seems like a really cool life, and you don't have to answer to anybody. And I have just the opposite view of it. Like, I think it's a great life to get in and out of, maybe occasionally.
Yeah.
Play cards, but you don't want to make that your life. If you want to view it as a professional endeavor, you're going to the office. You have no idea who your office mates are that day. One guy hasn't bathed in 3 days. Another guy is rude and nasty. And then the next day you go, it's a lot of fun people, and you have a woman there who's an actress, and you have a guy there who retired early from the aerospace industry, and you go, hey, how come I can't make that my office every day?
Right.
Well, because that's just not the way it's set up.
Right.
So I think I kind of view that bookie world the same way. Like, you romanticize it, but you want to be in and out of it. You want to see it and get out.
I did it for a couple of hours. I mean, your life is defined by the interesting people you meet, and generally speaking, that's an interesting event. And for a moment, it's interesting. But even in a cursory way, looking at poker, you have these weird guys and weird women with funny glasses and speaking a different language, and the thought of being around them all the time is strange, but to dip in seems fascinating.
Yeah. As we segue maybe into some other things, the whole EPA change there. You've got Pruitt running the EPA.
Right.
And he's a climate change denier. And, well, this is my perspective, everybody. Obviously.
We have a EPA administrator who's not great on the environment.
Yeah,
right.
the E in EPA is not necessary, and the P
is less so.
Yeah, right. So, but apparently, I just saw this story. They plumbed the lower Duwamish River when they built Seattle. Okay. And they had to straighten the curves, and then they saturated the sediment with a lot of toxic chemicals from an asphalt plant and all this sort of thing.
So it was like grungy in Seattle even before.
Boeing, that Seattle grunge actually had a root in that. Boeing and a lot of other industries grew up in Seattle, of course, and there was toxicity to those dumpings as well. So the damage was so bad that the last 5 miles of that river, before it empties into Elliott Bay, were actually designated a federal Superfund site. Okay, so that's a place that they've said we're going to dump millions and millions of dollars and clean this up. It's a priority site. And now, tell the Native Americans about this. It's so polluted, no fish can live there. They used to live on the salmon that they catch right here in this place I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So they've made some progress. It's $342 million in this cleanup.
Wow.
But what they're worried about is climate change, because scientists are saying that the rising seas could actually flood those banks by mid-century, and that the stormwater runoff and all the things that would sort of enhance that process could release more toxins that are sealed below. So you have a real ticking time bomb in a way. So now people who are working on this site going, well, wait a minute, the direction of the new EPA administrator and what they're going to do with this and all this and how we're treating this area. And by the way, I mentioned this one example, but obviously it's played out in a lot of different ways across this country, because there's Superfund sites everywhere that are being worked on. And what they're saying is, and Scott Pruitt, the EPA administrator, says, hey, look, we're going to get back to basics at the EPA.
Right.
Now, what does that mean? Does that mean we're going to try, he said we're going to try to streamline the process and fast track a lot of things and get these Superfund sites clean. All right. That sounds good. But if you don't believe in climate change and you don't think what the scientists are saying about climate change and then sort of the attendant problems that I just mentioned, if you don't think that's true, then probably a lot of the ways you're going to treat this issue, because it has to, you have to address what the projections are.
Right.
That's not going to be something that is going to be in the future plans. So it affects the strategy at the EPA. It's a weird...
It's kind of amazing, actually.
Yeah, it is. Because you'd think this particular agency has to take in both what's happening there on the ground and then what the projections are for what's going to happen. Anyway, so that's...
I mean, that's what people don't realize about these big agencies. They think, oh, it's too much government, oh, it's too much. The responsibilities they have and what they're able to facilitate, and in reverse, what they're able to defacilitate, is astonishing.
Yeah, exactly. And when you aren't taking the recommendations or the assessments of scientists seriously, because you deny science, and you can say, oh, Mark, he denies climate change, and there's a lot of controversy over it. Well, there really isn't controversy over climate change, and there really shouldn't be controversy over the man-made part, but that's a conversation for another time.
Right.
But what you would certainly say is we all agree on climate change, and so the scientists can tell you how fast the climate's changing, and it's actually outpacing even their projections. So based on that, you still have to make some adjustments. Leave the man-made part out if you want to.
Yes.
So it's crazy what's going on. But it's a sign of, again, how it intersects together with public policy.
Right.
So
it's a mess.
Yeah, there's that. All right, a lot of good more from the politics and more part of the Fast 15 with Michael Shure. And this is a slow 15 this week. We've got time on the show this week, so I'm glad we had a little time to kind of talk about some other stuff. This is a key week in your world of politics. Maybe you can run down those things that you think are most important.
I mean, I'll keep it tight. I think a couple of things that are most important are what the Republicans are doing with health care, kind of putting it together in an ad hoc way behind closed doors. They, according to Mitch McConnell, the Senate Majority Leader, are going to present it to the Senate without hearings have a vote on it up or down, and that's it.
Now, let me just stop you there. How common is that? Does that?
It's not terribly common for something that is impactful as healthcare. You know, when so many hearings were held during the creation of the Affordable Care Act, to not have one in this second round of the American Health Care Act, the HCA. So I would have to say that it's not common for this sort of thing. Sometimes senators prefer it be done that way for smaller pieces of legislation that they can't get into the weeds on, like all of us have. If you took 6 courses in high school, you weren't as interested in all of them as you were in the ones that you liked the most or were as important. It's the same thing when you're a senator, or if you own a garage company. There are things that you want to task out to other people, and there are things that you want to sink your teeth into. So it's not that common, but to have this precedent on something that's so impactful to so many people is bad. I think it's bad because senators who might not want to support something like this, forced to support it. But Mitch McConnell is saying, listen, the Congress runs this country, not the White House. And that's kind of his position.
What has been the position of the White House on this?
Well, the White House initially just wanted something to be done. And
they were excited.
Yeah, they want to come home with some legislation. Then Donald Trump tweets out the other day that he thinks it's mean, this legislation. I don't quite understand what his intent was by that. Was it mean because it cuts funding from the elderly and he's among them now? Is it mean for the fact that it's mean to pharmaceutical companies? I mean, I don't know what his thrust was, but it certainly wasn't consistent with someone who really wanted to see this pass. And then there are senators who I would say it would be really politically stupid for them to support this. Senators who were up in 2018, I think immediately of Dean Heller in Nevada, who is up in 2018 in a blue state, and I think he goes against this and he hurts Medicaid in his state, he's in trouble.
Yeah, this is tricky because it seems as though it's fraught with problems, and you don't want too much of it sticking to you.
Correct. Quickly, Jeff Sessions, an important piece of news this week. He testified before the Senate Intelligence Committee. He answered very little. He was pretty evasive. He did not come in, with the White House behind him claiming executive privilege that he didn't have to answer. So if he didn't have that and the president and the White House had long enough time to have invoked that, he didn't have it, yet he still didn't want to answer any questions. He didn't even indicate to Joe Manchin, the senator from West Virginia, the Democrat, that he would come back and do it in closed session. So all he did was tell you he didn't remember, he didn't recall. If this meeting happened that they say happened, I don't remember it happening, which of course makes people think, of course it happened. I think there's a misread on the part of Sessions. I don't think anybody thinks he meddled with the election last year. I don't think that at all. I think that they do think that he is covering up and has perjured himself and lied under oath. He's covering up contacts between Russia and the campaign, and that's bad.
And finally, there's been now shootings.
Yeah, there's a workplace shooting in San Francisco, killing 4 at a UPS packing and sorting and distribution facility. And, that's one of these horrendous gun violent workplace shootings. And then it happens on the same day that a member of the U.S. Congress was shot while playing second base in a practice for the congressional baseball game, which is done for charity annually. When the Republicans play the Democrats, they have a good time. Somebody opened fire. The assailant was killed. 2 people remain in critical condition, including the majority whip of the House of Representatives. A House aide also was shot. And so it's just terrible what's going on with guns. And it's happening, you can't, when a politician is shot, you can't help but talk about politics involved in it. I don't think it's dirty to talk about it. I don't think there's anything wrong with saying maybe this is a wake-up call to that wing, that there really is a gun problem in this country. Not to say that this man wasn't mentally disturbed, but he was mentally disturbed, and we need to spend a lot more time with mental health. But when someone's mentally disturbed, getting a gun is too easy. And another thing to underscore here is the safety of our elected officials. Steve Scalise, because he's the majority whip in the House of Representatives, has a protective detail all the time. The Democrats were practicing their game this morning too, and they had nobody in leadership there. If some nut had tried to shoot at the Democrats, they could have shot all day because there wasn't anybody to shoot back. And fortunately for everyone, the Capitol Police had somebody there to take this guy out. Just tragic and sad, and we talk about it every day. And the pathetic thought that we think something's going to change because it was Steve Scalise. Don't keep your hopes up.
Well, when it comes to changes as far as gun laws and background checks, or by the way, Virginia, I think, has a very low threshold in terms of how easy it is to get a weapon. You really can't, to me, get past Newtown. If you could kill 20 kids at Newtown and there's still no even legitimate discussion of modifying the gun laws, well, then you could pretty much get the memo. This isn't
absolutely. And people thought that after Gabby Giffords, the Congress would act. Well, she wasn't everybody's congressman. She was a Democratic congressman from Arizona. So maybe you say, okay, now Steve Scalise. I hope the guy gets well. And I hope he's okay. But I hope he's okay and can come back and say, maybe I should change a little bit on this. Chuck Fleischman, a Tennessee Republican who was there today as well playing, said that, he's really scared. And if he had had a gun, he would have been able to do something about it. So that's pervasive.
You'll hear that if there had been more good guys with guns, that argument. And we'd welcome your comments. You can leave them right there on the website, edge-show.com. You could usually, discussions about guns and legislation bring back a few comments, so we respect all comers. Well, I've given you the extras today. We've given you the more. We've had a couple of gambling stories. We told you about what's happening at the Robert Durst trial. I mentioned that super fun site, and I also told you about Dennis Rodman. I feel this has been a valuable outing.
This has been good.
Ladies and gentlemen, our thanks to Michael Shure!
Oh, my gosh. Thank you. So nice of all of you. Great to be here. Thank you.
You're listening to The Edge.
edge-show.com.
edge-show.com.
Hey, I want to first welcome Laura House to the house.
Hello, good morning and good night, America.
I often ask Laura House to sit in with us because once in a while, J. Elvis Weinstein or Heather can't make it, and Laura is a delight. She's a comedy writer. She's a great performer. She was a shaman in a rainforest or some shit. What was that?
I sound great.
You do sound.
I teach meditation, and
That's it, you teach
you're
meditation,
you're referencing my raw food retreat in Bali.
Yes, your raw food retreat in Bali and your meditation. You put that all together, and you're a shaman in the rainforest.
Just a real creep.
Yeah, and so, but she does still have like. What do I want to say? Kind of a raw quality to her outlook.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just...
So don't worry, we're not going to get all warm and fuzzy with the meditation and stuff.
No, I'm all for like meditation for smartasses is more or less my mission.
Great. Anyway, welcome Laura House.
Thanks for having me.
And I was asked this week to introduce another podcast that's going on to our audience, and it was my pleasure to do that. I think it's cool to share podcasts, and there's a new one going up from somebody who works in our iHeart family, and that's Joe Kwon.
Hello.
Hi, Joe Kwon.
Hi.
All right. So, Joe Kwon, what is your podcast called?
It's very, I thought about it for a long time.
Yeah.
It's called Joe Kwon Reporting.
Wow.
Oh, man. Snap.
I had to really reach for that one.
Yeah. What is it about?
So I'm a reporter.
So you're Joe Kwon.
I decided that I want to go into topics and dive into things behind the headlines and something that I see. You can't open up a newspaper without seeing an article or something about medical marijuana or the legalization of recreational marijuana. So I said, okay. I was having a discussion with somebody and said, you should do this because that's what you do. I sound engineer stories and put them together.
Sure.
Kind of make it a sound adventure. I started listening to Serial,
Crime
Town, and I'm like, I could maybe not as great as those shows, but
hey, who's to say?
I just want to make sure I understand what this is. Is this a podcast about marijuana and in its different forms?
It is about the news headlines around marijuana. So, for example, the first episode was about all the issues that came up about policing pot. It's all this whole new world for California because voters just decided to make recreational marijuana legal or really decriminalizing it. So I've been talking to officers about how are you going to deal with this? Can you just walk down the street and have a joint? And what are the rules? And there's a lot of questions is kind of what I'm getting at. I also talked to a prosecutor I talked to a defense attorney. I talked to some of the funner episodes, talking to some nuns who have gotten into the business.
Wow,
Nice.
why is that?
I gotta go pitch that. Excuse me.
Why?
I'll be right back with $100,000. Excuse me.
Yeah, you're telling me.
I gotta go call my friend at Warner
If
Brothers.
you can't sell that show, you're.
Nuns selling pot.
They're
Okay,
known
here
as
it
the
is.
weed nuns.
All
The
right.
weed nuns.
Now, I don't like that title though.
I'll get on it.
The pulpit of pot. The
That's the nickname they were given, but they just go by Sisters of the Valley.
Sisters of Smoke. Do you like that?
Yeah, there you go. This
right.
sounds like they're a band.
That's true. You're right. That's no good. That's no good. We're going to come up with a TV show. Thank you very much, Joe Kwon.
The Sisters on High.
I get a
Oh, I
royalty,
love
right?
Then
that.
it's buried in there.
It's a play on the
Yeah,
on
no,
the
you
high
get it.
thing.
Yeah, then you don't have to like come out like
You
it's
are
not
good.
It's not so crass that you're like weed. You're like,
Yeah.
oh,
You're absolutely
Sisters on High,
Oh,
and then you go, oh, that's yeah.
I love it.
No, I'm very good. I'm very good. I gotta go call Lionsgate real quick.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
So Joe
I should
Kwon
get into a
reporting.
different business.
So it's Joe Kwon reporting, but it's all about pot, or that's just like season one
will be all
the
about
stuff.
pot,
Got it.
products, policing,
Yeah, great.
to nuns.
Are you gonna get high on it?
No,
Oh,
I'm a reporter, so
right, but like that would be like
if I do, nobody will know.
episode. Well, but or if it's like episode 7, I'm gonna try this stuff.
I know you're a news person. I don't want to ask you whether or not you get high.
Nope. I have in college,
Yeah.
maybe a few times in high school. I went to UC Santa Barbara. I mean, that's
Yeah, you
part
got it.
of
It's
the-
so weird if you didn't get high.
Yeah.
I know. That's another thing. There's all this growing and extractions,
Yeah.
and I don't.
Yeah, all the
I
strains.
didn't even know about all this stuff.
Interesting.
Well, the guy I was playing cards with a lot was one of those pot purveyors of pot. Wasn't a pot dealer. He was like a, you know what I'm saying? He had like a business, like a storefront. It was a what do you call it? Like a medical marijuana thing?
Dispensary.
Yeah, dispensary. Thank you. That's exactly the word I want. And
Dispensary.
yeah, thank you. That's it. That's the one. So he gave me. He said, "Like I know you don't get high, but he said I'm going to give you this cheesecake. It's a small cheesecake. It was in a vacuum packed thing. He
Oh,
said,
man.
and just sometime when you don't have to be anywhere or do anything, you should try some. It really is great." And it was like. It was labeled on the bottom like super strong or incredibly strong or something.
Wow.
So it sat in the back of my refrigerator for months. And then I had a bad headache. I was supposed to go to Santa Barbara.
Oh.
So I had a bad headache, and I thought, I'm going to maybe try some of this. It was like 11 in the morning. I had to head out to Santa Barbara around 3
Were you
to meet
driving?
some people for dinner because there was going to be a
boy.
weekend up
This-
there.
This is not
It's
going to
not
end
gonna,
well.
not gonna go well at all.
So I hit a little bit of the small amount of the cheesecake, very small amount, like a sliver. And I sit there on the couch, and of course nothing happens. And I still got the headache. I'm thinking this is awful. I mean, And I wait 30 minutes, 40 minutes, nothing.
Classic.
So
So
I
you
go,
had more?
back,
Yeah.
go
Oh,
back, and you know what happened.
Classic
And now-
dummy.
No.
Yeah, now I've had about, I'm going to
High-
say 20% of the little thing
Yeah.
that he gave me.
High AF.
And sure enough, I lay there on the couch and I couldn't move. I remember being so thirsty, and the kitchen is only 12
Yeah.
feet away.
There's no way to get there.
You
And I
got the kind that
could
makes you
not
like a couch
move.
potato.
Yeah.
There's two different kinds.
It was worse. I mean, couch potato, I feel like you can get up and go to the bathroom or something. I could not move.
Wow.
I felt, and I was there until like middle of the night.
Wow.
Yeah.
You had a
That's,
fifth of the cake, the entire cake?
I'm going to say about 20% of it.
Wow.
That doesn't sound fun.
Ooh.
It was
I've
just
never
awful.
had edibles because I'm afraid of that.
Yeah, you don't know what's
happening.
gonna happen.
So
I one time had edible before it was legal, so like it's just a little cooler, But we had edibles.
Street cred,
Yeah,
street
no,
cred.
whatever. If you want to do drugs when they're legal, like whatever, lame,
Sure.
right?
Yeah. You're a
we,
rebel.
We had to sneak. We
Yeah.
had to sneak around. People with your Molly and your whatever. We had to go to some gay bar and find the guy.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
we.
To meet a guy named Ramon out in the
you
back
had to
alley.
figure lots of things out, and
Yeah.
it was just a series of bad decisions to get drugs. And so, not like now where you just go, oh, there's one right by this falafel place.
Right. They send you a catalog.
You just go, oh, there's one by this Subway over here.
Right.
So we had edible cookies. And yeah, so you just get super high. And so one of my friends, she was like, I'm like too high, you guys. Like made the announcement, and she was like, you guys, I'm like too high. You guys, I'm too high. She's like freaking out. And I loved that feeling. I was like, this is great. I love, like.
Can you
let's
function when
reach for
you're...
oh, yeah. Oh, I was very good at this. And then, but she has a twin sister, and her sister was not using that night. She was like babysitting. So she goes, whenever I used to feel that way, I would just tell myself, I'm just high enough.
That should be on a T-shirt.
I'm just high enough. Remember, you're just high enough.
You're just high enough.
And then the girl calmed down.
That's what you want her to do.
It was amazing.
You're your own worst enemy.
Okay,
on that
yeah. Oh, I'm just high enough. But I never forgot I was high when I was high. Like that, like when people were like, "Whoa, what if we?" And it's like, well, we know we're on acid, so just don't use a tractor or whatever.
Yeah, but no.
Down.
But
no, but you were paralyzed. So
no, but your brain
understand.
does spiral. That is true. I mean, I've got that too. Where you have anxiety.
I have a better brain, I guess. I have a brain made for drugs.
You do.
She knows that she's just high enough.
Anyway, so the season 1 is how many episodes?
I don't know yet.
Wow, it's so.
Be,
this is like a mystery novel.
I'm
just
putting it all
unfolds.
together because I didn't want to do too okay. I got to get this here. Got to get this here. I'm just trying
it's
to.
Not all put
I'm
together
interviewing
yet.
people and I'm putting it all together because this is more instead of this talk kind of format. It's more a produced infocast podcast type of thing.
It's
so
a reporter.
It's probably going to be about 8 episodes.
She's not going to have idiots interrupting her.
Right.
No,
right,
I like
right.
it. No,
we bring them in.
No, you guys aren't idiots.
We literally email idiots to interrupt us. Anyway,
I wouldn't know where I'd be without an idiot interrupting me.
Joe, we wish you good luck on it. Again, it's called Joe Kwon Reporting.
Yep, and it's on iTunes.
Cool.
What else? Google Play, and if you on my website, just joekwon.com.
Cool.
That's really, really cool. So, how many episodes in are you?
2.
So you can still get in on the ground floor.
The next episode will be the Weed Nuns.
Nice.
Yeah, well, we're not calling them Weed Nuns anymore. What are we calling?
What
them
are we
again?
calling
Sisters on High?
Oh, Sisters on High. So
okay.
great. Oh.
They did smoke a joint before they spoke with me, so.
Well, it'd be weird if they didn't.
I know. And they met me in
literally-
Venice.
I like their God.
Yeah. I was going to say, they may bring me back over.
I'm sober. I don't do anything anymore
Yeah.
at all. I don't do it. I just read.
Yeah.
But I think somebody who doesn't understand it. I just read, and it's all we're allowed to do. But I got to say, that's a pretty chill God. It's it's cool.
They say they're healers, so
Yeah.
in that sense, they're not really traditional religion, but.
Joe Kwon, we can hear your podcast anytime we want on iTunes, on the Joe Kwon website, which is called
joekwon.com.
joekwon.com. And Kwon is spelled Kwon.
Yep.
What was Kwon also? Wasn't Kwon mean it was like a term for money? The Kwon.
It was on Jerry Maguire, right?
Yeah, I want
Didn't
the
you-
Kwon.
yeah.
Oh,
It's all about the Kwon.
I didn't know.
I didn't know that too till somebody sent that to me.
By the way,
interesting.
you may want to call your next podcast, It's All About the Kwon.
Maybe.
Yeah, just throwing this stuff out there.
Do you not understand branding?
You're
Because
right.
she doesn't need to keep changing the name.
Oh, you're probably right. Yeah, that would be a bad idea. Yeah, strike that. That's why Laura's here.
Yeah,
All right.
I'm here to keep it
All
young.
ideas run by you.
I know. I'm
first.
here to keep it young.
Ladies and gentlemen, Joe Kwon!
Thank you.
I want to thank you for all the ways that you support my friends on the Edge podcast. And if you haven't already, why don't you show your support and subscribe? What's the matter with you? Go to Edge Show. Oh, it's Edge Dash. What's with the dash? Stupid. All right, I want to thank you for all the ways that you support my friends on the Edge podcast. Show your support and leave something on their website, edge-show.com. Stupid. Why is there a dash?
edge-show.com.
Just this morning, an article ran in the LA Times on the vanishing world of Madagascar. The habitat is vanishing, the habitat of virtually all the creatures there, but the lemurs in particular. So you're probably saying, well, Mark, why are you talking about this? Because I'd already planned on speaking to one of the foremost experts in lemurdom on this episode. And she is here, Mireya Mayor. Hello.
Hello, Mark.
And you're here with your husband,
I am.
Phil Fairclough.
Hello, Mark.
Phil, you sound like you're not from this country.
That's correct. I am not from this country. Another country, England. I am a
yes.
Brit, grieving for our exit from the European community.
Oh, that's a conversation for another time.
That's another conversation. But just so you know that I'm not entirely irrelevant to this, I do have a degree in zoology, but it's from a British university.
I like that was preceded by a but it's from
Because I
British.
tease him about it.
She doesn't think it's quite up to snuff.
Well, you know what? It's great that you're both here because I'd love for you, Phil, to describe some of Mireya's background because she is a highly accomplished scientist in a world I would suspect that's dominated by men. Is that right? Or
Well, there's quite a number of female primatologists that everybody knows, like Jane Goodall and Diane Fossey, Baruti Galdikas. But yes, in the scientific community, it's mainly, a male-dominated world.
more to the point, you have this crazy background, if I can just say that.
You can.
Is it true, Phil, that your lovely wife who's here, who's a primatologist and an accomplished woman, was a cheerleader?
It is true. I've even seen the costume as well as photographs and video of her as a cheerleader for the Miami Dolphins.
For the Miami Dolphins?
That's
you were an NFL cheerleader.
I was an NFL cheerleader.
Yes, and it is almost unfathomable that someone who's as smart as her and as scientifically erudite as her was also performing in front of vast crowds and, if I might say, and I'm obviously very biased, rather easy on the eyes. So, these two things aren't really meant to go together. Someone who has true brains and care and compassion for a world that I'm fascinated by. I told you I have a degree in zoology. I grew up as an animal lover. And then to meet someone who was sort of the female equivalent of one of my heroes, Jacques Cousteau, who is quite happy, much happier than me, living in the jungles in absolute sort of awful, squalid conditions, but is gorgeous and smart to boot. You can see why I was drawn there.
Yeah, if you said, do you think any of these NFL cheerleaders are going to go on to be highly respected primatologists, you would say, with all due respect to them, probably not.
Now.
I associate most of those people who are cheerleaders with theater and performance of one sort or another. For all I know, you were working on the sidelines with a bunch of other biologists, zoologists, and...
There are some unbelievably brilliant cheerleaders that are now scientists. In fact, I did something with sort of sci-cheer, where they're out there encouraging young girls to explore all avenues of life and not get pigeonholed into, well, I'm a cheerleader, so I can't be a scientist. So you'd be surprised how brilliant some of these cheerleaders are.
I would be surprised. I am surprised, and I'm sorry to all cheerleaders out there. I guess there's a lot more going on there than meets the eye. But you are a primatologist, which means you study primates.
Correct.
An anthropologist.
Correct.
And what does that mean?
Well, anthro is man, and so the study of man, so our evolutionary background, which of course is linked back to primates, which are our closest living relatives, and we're primates.
Well, you're a wildlife expert.
Yes.
You're a conservationist.
Correct.
You're an explorer.
Also.
You're an author. What's the name of your book?
Pink Boots and a Machete.
I love that title.
Thank you.
Because you are someone who's very active. As Phil says, you get out there and you have to get into the jungle to do the kind of study that you want to do.
I call it muddy boots conservation, and it's the best conservation, and in fact the most effective conservation is to be out there on the ground, getting your field boots muddy with the local people, with the animals. That's really the most effective type.
I should mention Phil knows a lot of these habitats as well. He's been there, I think, without you, like before he even met you. And also now that he's met you, I know you guys have done a lot in these various habitats together.
Correct. Yeah, we went to Rwanda, went up hiking to see the mountain gorillas.
But I have to say, Mireya is much, much tougher than I am. Seriously. I would never have done half the things she would do.
Well, Phil was worried about the bees in Africa.
Yes. Well, I was worried because for anyone who knows anything about Africanized bees or African bees, they also go by the other name of killer bees. Right. So Mireya was leading a trip up to see mountain gorillas in the Virungas, which involved hiking through fields with guides who were taking us up through the fields of the various crops, and they pointed out these beehives on the horizon. I said, "Look, the bees." And I said to Mireya, you know where we are, don't you? She said, "Yes, Africa." And I said, "You know about African bees, don't you?" And she said, "Yes, they're killer bees." I said, "You didn't tell me you were bringing me through
this really
swarms
happened.
of killer bees to get to the gorillas. I would never have come." I will say that as much as I love and know about animals, my fascination is a little more academic, although I
Can I stay here in the cab?
Yes,
and just
can
watch
I read
everything?
a book about it?
Yeah.
He had a lot of birds at home.
Oh, That's great. I mean, it is funny. We have become so urbanized, I think, just culturally, all of us, that when you can't sort of safely on a day trip go see whatever you've got to see and study and then head back to the hotel, it's outside of your comfort zone almost by definition. It's weird. I mean, I think we're all a bit like that. You're clearly the exception, Mireya, and I think Phil is somewhere in the middle. You know, he's going to adventure, but, you know, like to, after the adventure, maybe get back to the, you know.
I like a cappuccino on the way and a glass of wine at the end.
I wish we had more time, and we'll have more time the next time. But it's eerie coincidence that just this morning I was looking at the LA Times, and the headline is Madagascar's forest, lemurs dying. As people cut down trees to survive, it says, 90% of the island's primates face extinction. Now, I assume this is an area you know a lot about. You've been there, you studied these lemurs. You were involved in the discovery of one of the smallest primates on Earth.
Right, the mouse lemur.
Madagascar, it's an island off East Africa, right?
Correct.
And
yeah.
it's about the size of Texas. And with 90% of this gone, that is to say the habitat that is used by the lemurs, and I assume that there are other primates there, or is it all lemur country?
So it's all lemurs, and lemurs are only found on the island of Madagascar, which is one of the things that makes it so unbelievably special. But the other fauna found there is also only found in Madagascar. And so the lemurs have become the iconic species for Madagascar. But the truth is you'd be losing the fossa, which is their predator. It's sort of a puma-like animal, which also only lives in Madagascar. You'd be losing, you know, thousands of species of frogs and chameleons and all sorts of different creatures that are only found on this island. So it's this amazing place filled with animals that are found nowhere else on the planet, and more than 90% of their habitat is disappeared.
90% of this place, Madagascar, the habitat is gone?
So 90% is actually a figure that's been floating around for more than 15 years. The truth is that it's a lot more than 90%. That's based on old aerial footage. Slash and burn agriculture, something that the Malgache call tavi, is still something that's commonly and widely practiced throughout the island. And because Madagascar, the soil is so poor in nutrients, the crops of rice, which is what they're growing mostly, they don't they have to go and slash more and more forest every couple of years because it doesn't last, you know, very many seasons.
I see. The soil won't support season after season.
Correct.
And they talk about this in this article. These desperately poor families are faced with a choice, but it's really no choice at all. Either we clear this forest and we provide meagerly for our family, or we take the conservationist word for it, which is, hey, don't touch this forest because, you know, you're driving these creatures to extinction and no one will have anything at the end. But it doesn't provide them with any means to survive, to sustain themselves.
And it's a really tough position for a conservationist to go in anywhere, especially a country as poor as Madagascar, and expect anyone to, you know, to basically you're asking them to stop feeding their families so that you could save lemurs. And so what has to happen is that there need to be alternatives for these people. And a lot of these alternatives come with long sustained conservation programs where you're setting up camp there, you're bringing in ecotourism, you're training them as guides and you know, for rangers. A lot of times they'll set up camps for people to stay in and they're cooking for them. I mean, you're providing sort of alternative jobs and means to get dinner for their families. If you don't do that, if you can't just go in and set up fences and say, okay, you're not allowed to go in there anymore, you're not allowed to cultivate the forest, you're not allowed to hunt these animals, it becomes sort of in a sense a warlike situation because all they want is for their families to survive and to eat, just like that's all we want for our families. We need them to be in a good place. We need to have the financial stability to take care of them. And in a country like this, that's a very difficult thing to do.
Look, I'm an armchair conservationist. You know, I send off support money and I follow it a lot and I try to speak about it occasionally when it is appropriate. But to someone like you and to Phil, people who are working in the field, you're a firsthand witness to what's going on. It has to be heartbreaking in a sense.
Oh, it's completely heartbreaking. And it's what called me into this field in the first place. I mean, I was pre-law degree, and I thought I was going that route. And I started learning about all of these critically endangered animals, lemurs in particular, which were on the verge of extinction. They'd never been studied before. There weren't even photographs of these animals, and it really, compelled me and drove me to go out there and try to make a difference. When I first started working in Madagascar, there were about 30 known species of lemurs. And this is how little we knew about this spectacular place, because now there's over 110 recognized species, and there's discoveries being made all the time. The problem is at this point is that we make these discoveries and everyone gets very excited. Here's a brand new species to science. And then that forest becomes a field and those animals are gone. And at the rate at which this is happening, it's not impossible that in the next 20 years, our children will never see those animals.
Of course, that's happening all over the planet to one habitat or another.
Yeah.
There are people listening maybe who might say, well, listen, just make it illegal to deforest there and, have the government, there is a government there, have them step in, and people will find other ways to sustain themselves. It's ecotourism, and there are other industries that can exist in Madagascar besides this deforesting or growing rice or selling charcoal, which is what they do also, and selling this wood, which goes to Asia illegally. And that brings me to a point. There are laws, but they aren't respected in the least, and there is a huge illegal trade to the point that is really the de facto way business is done every day.
That's right. So there are these laws on paper, and they're very hard to enforce because you have the Chinese mafia coming in, for example, and threatening the local villagers, sometimes even within the borders, like inside a national park. So there is, and then they're say, quote unquote, caught, but nothing happens. There's no repercussions.
Right. They're never taken to court. They're never penalized in any way.
No. And so rosewood is a huge issue there. They're going after the really big trees, a lot of times to make guitars and that sort of thing, that, tables that people buy. And I think that's where the armchair conservationists can make a huge difference by not buying these products, by being really aware of what it is that they're buying and making sure that they're not coming from, say, a rosewood forest in Madagascar.
Right. I was noticing in the article, this is a really good piece. Maybe we'll post a link to it on our website. But I noticed in the piece that they were talking about the fact that those who are called upon to enforce the law aren't even armed. And virtually everyone who's breaking the law is armed. So everybody's scared. Like even the guys who are enforcing the law are scared of the people who are breaking the law.
So the irony is that the poverty in Madagascar is in fact so real that they can't afford bullets. And so oftentimes you'll see guards with guns, but they don't have bullets in those. Whereas the people coming in to either hunt or clear roads or, take out these massive trees, they're in fact armed. So of course that puts them in a very dangerous position and not a very effective one.
There's a guy, Jonah Ratsimbas. How does he say?
Ratsimbafatsi.
Yeah. And he heads up the local group, it says in this article, for studying and researching primates of Madagascar. I guess you must know that guy.
So I've known Jonah for more than 15 years. We actually went to graduate school together at Stony Brook University, and he's unbelievably smart, and more than that, he's incredibly dedicated and passionate and always has been. He left Madagascar to get his graduate degree, knowing full well he was going to go back to Madagascar to teach, to inspire others, and to also protect the forests that he loved so much.
That has to be, you talk about somebody who just has to feel like he's getting the wind knocked out of him every day.
He is fighting the daily fight.
Does he feel as though there's any incremental progress anyway?
I mean, I think we all have hope and we see, small steps going forward, but then something like a cyclone will hit, or, there was recently a coup in Madagascar where I had actually personally made some headway with the president and the prime minister, and they had promised to triple the number of parks, for example, in Madagascar, and proclaim areas national parks. And then they were ousted, and a 30-plus-year-old disc jockey came in, and everything just went awry. And all of these places were basically invaded by outsiders who wanted to either mine for sapphires or log the trees. And this was a huge setback. They now have a stable government again, and I think we're back on the right track. But it's a lot of damage done and a lot of repairing to be done.
Oh my God, we have to wrap up. But let me just ask you, A 30-year-old DJ became president of the country?
Yes. I know, it's crazy, right? When someone you don't think should be president suddenly becomes president.
Yeah, I wish we could.
But there are, as Mireya has shown me, models for conservation of primates that are successful, and they do involve conservation paying its way and making people who want to come and see animals, in this case we went to see mountain gorillas, pay to see what is truly a spectacular experience, one of the most amazing things you can do. People are comfortable paying for spectacular experiences. This is a model that has been successful, where conservation and economics come together. And in the case of mountain gorillas, with a very, very stable government in Rwanda, which is remarkable given the history of Rwanda, and a great deal of commitment, the gorilla population there, I believe, is stopped decreasing.
They're the only
growing.
ape species that actually the populations have been increasing over the last few years.
So there you go. As Phil says, that shows that there is a viable model. It's not just an academic
There
thing.
absolutely
it's actually
is.
working.
If you have people coming in and spending money locally in these local communities, those people are going to become less reliant on the forest, and they're going to not hunt, not use it for cultivating, and those lemurs have a much higher chance to survive.
I want to talk to you about things beyond the lemur. I want to talk to you, Phil, about television projects. I mean, Phil has been hip deep in the Everglades trying to get some shot of a gator or something. I mean, you guys have very rich, interesting lives, and your personal story is amazing too. That for the next visit.
That's a different episode.
Yeah. Thank you for this visit.
Thank you.
Interesting.
Thank you, Mark.
Hey, everybody, why don't you do me a favor and like The Edge with Mark Thompson on Facebook? Yeah, that's going to bring in the kids.
Get more of The Edge on Stitcher and iTunes, or go to our website, edge-show.com.